Today is part 2 of our Advent series that we're calling Wacky Christmas. Christmas is a wonderful season. It's filled with all kinds of great stuff. But along with all the great stuff, there's also a lot of really strange things. There's a lot of wacky stuff out there concerning Christmas. And it's almost like each year there's something else about Christmas that's kind of just one step further away from what Christmas is actually supposed to be all about. So this year for Advent, we're doing a series on what some of those wacky things are, and we're going to talk a little bit about what Christmas is actually supposed to be. Last week we talked about the chaos of Christmas. That although Christmas is intended to be a time of peace and a reminder that we can have peace in all things, Christmas season is often the least peaceful time of the year for most people. And we were reminded that we can have peace, not just at Christmas, but every day, in every situation, by placing our faith in Jesus Christ and focusing on Him as Lord of our lives. Today, we're going to be talking about another thing that's really wacky about Christmas. But before I actually get into it all, I wonder if we could play a little bit of an imagination game. Okay? So for this game, here's what I'd like you to do. I want you to pretend that you are some sort of an alien from another world or maybe another dimension or whatever happens to work for you. But that you are an alien from somewhere else coming to Earth to study our culture and our traditions so that you can go back to your people and report on what we are like. Okay? Sounds fun, doesn't it? Yeah. Okay. So let's say you're this alien and you come down here to Smiths Falls and you come on July the 1st. And what you see is a celebration. Right? The Canadian flag is being flown on every flagpole. Well, there's a delay. On every apartment balcony, on pretty much every car that you see. I mean, the flags are everywhere. You see people wearing Canadian flag t-shirts, or some of them are running around with flags on like capes and big hats and stuff. Every once in a while you see a parade of floats with people yelling, "Happy Canada Day," or "Happy Birthday, Canada." There's music and there's food and there's fun. Now, to someone who doesn't know this culture, coming down for the first time and seeing all this stuff, what would you assume was going on? Shout it out. Anything. They're happy? Yeah. What do you think they're celebrating? Canada. Even if you didn't know what Canada was, it's pretty clear they're celebrating one specific thing, maybe a birthday, right? Let's say instead of Canada Day, you came on November 11th, and everywhere you went, you saw flags flying that had a soldier and some flowers on them. You saw people that were gathered at monuments bearing images of war. Crowds of people were gathered everywhere. Well, this is jumping all over the place. Can you go back to jump back about 6 slides, 7 slides? Okay, this ain't going to work. That's a shame, because that was starting to be fun. So just so you know, I'm trying to light up the phone now. Okay, where are we? We're at monuments. Okay. You see the leaders at these gatherings, along with people in uniform. Next slide. And they're gathering together with wreaths. And in the next slide, you'll see that they're laying these wreaths either on gravestones or on the monuments. And you see that people everywhere you look, at exactly the same time during the day, no matter what part of the city you might happen to be in, you see everyone stop and go quiet. You see flags everywhere around town that say, "Lest we forget." Now, being an alien who doesn't know this culture, next slide, please. There we go. Being an alien from another culture, seeing all this, what would you assume this is about? Oh, this is a little hard because you actually know what it's about, but pretend with me, okay? Work with me here. What would you assume this is about? remembrance, right? You're remembering something. Or it might be interpreted as some kind of a funeral ceremony of some kind. You're remembering the ones that have gone before. Clearly, it has something to do with the military, right? All arrows point in one direction. Let's see if I can do this. Now, how about if you came at Christmas? I'm going to try. We'll see what happens. So what do you see? You see houses decorated with all kinds of colorful lights. As you go around town, you're looking in people's houses, you see that there are trees that are brightly decorated and lit up in people's homes, and honestly, no two trees are exactly alike. Each one is a little bit different from the last one you saw, and there are trees everywhere, inside, outside, all over the place. Some houses have socks hanging in them, either on the wall or on fireplaces. As you look, you see that people have snowflakes in their windows. Others have images of a fat guy in a red suit carrying a big red bag. Some lawns have erected a sleigh with reindeer pulling it or some kind of deer. Other lawns have completely different stuff. Some have snowmen. Others have, bears. Some have, robots. And sometimes they have little people dressed in green. Other lawns have erected an artificial lean-to with a family inside it, hanging out with still more animals. Every store you go into has a sale on. And all the people everywhere seem to be in such an awful hurry. The signs you see around the city say things like Happy Holidays and Christmas turkey sale and last-minute gift ideas. Every store has one of those trees in it, or many of them, but most of them also have a pile of decorated packages underneath. You notice there's a lot of bells everywhere you go. And every single mall you go into has a fat guy in a red suit taking pictures with small children. A little creepy. You see, the number of people in all the stores is probably 10 times the number it was any previous visit of yours. And everyone seems to be having this incredible sense of urgency about buying more things. You see a parade coming again, but instead of hearing people yell Happy Canada Day, you hear cries of Happy Holidays. And again, there's a fat guy in a red suit waving and throwing candy. You see a local news crew doing interviews in the streets, so you stop and you watch for a moment to learn. And you hear them ask, what does Christmas mean to you? And in response, you hear all kinds of stuff. You hear that it's a time for family. You hear that it's a time for getting together with friends or loved ones. You hear that it's someone's birthday. You hear that it's a time for presents and stuff. You hear about good food, good friends, good times. There seem to be people everywhere collecting. Some are collecting money, some are collecting food, some are collecting clothing. You keep hearing people talk about their Christmas dinner plans, and everywhere you go, there are these special dinners taking place. In the evenings, you see families gathered around their TV set, watching holiday specials about reindeer that can talk with light bulb noses, or talking snowmen, or they're watching the latest Hallmark Christmas movie, which is about someone falling in love with their childhood sweetheart. Every single time. Now, as someone who doesn't know the culture, someone from some foreign land or other dimension, if you came and you saw all of this stuff for the first time, what would you think this special event was about? I don't know. Maybe. Yeah. For me, this is the single most wacky thing there is about Christmas. See, if you didn't have someone to explain to you what was going on, if you weren't raised in the culture of Christmas, if you didn't already have all the ideas, hadn't grown up listening to the stories, hadn't seen any of this stuff before, Christmas doesn't make any sense. And I mean, even now, right now, if we were to have all of these thoughts that we have about Christmas, if everything was just suddenly erased, we had amnesia like in the movies, We had amnesia, and we were able to look at Christmas, look at it again for the very first time. We would see that it doesn't make any sense. And I'll add that Santa isn't the problem. I mean, he's a problem, but he's not the problem. Now, if you look at our culture's behavior and what it actually says about Christmas, you'll see that even he is being lost in the mix and confusion that Christmas has become. On one hand, it resembles a celebration of lights. Worship of stars, bright lights, lit up houses, lit up trees, lit up neighborhoods, and lit up sidewalks. On the other hand, it resembles a celebration of snow, snowflakes in the window, snow decorations everywhere, icicles hanging from our trees, spray-on snow in storefronts and on our homes. Snowmen everywhere. Yet, on the other hand, it resembles a celebration of our worship of animals. If you really think about it, I mean, it may just be in recent years, but now most of the displays or decorations include some kind of woodland creature. I don't know if you've noticed this. Everything from squirrels and puppies and bunnies and they're just everything, especially polar bears. There are a lot of polar bears on the lawns in our community today. I know because I was driving around looking at them last night. I mean, even the nativity sets that we see set up in people's lawns they just show a family nestled in a barn with a bunch of animals, don't they? I mean, that's what people say. If you don't know what it is, we know what it is. But if you don't know what it is and that's what you're looking at, that's what you see. A family hanging out with their animals. But if I had to pick just one thing, that with our behavior, culturally speaking, we have declared Christmas to be about, it's that Christmas is about buying the most stuff we can at the greatest discount we can find for all the people that we have in our lives. Culturally speaking, our behavior says that Christmas is about presents. Doesn't it? Now, you might agree, you might disagree, and that's okay. What Christmas has become is not really what we need to be focusing on anyway. Now, what I want to talk about today is keeping Christmas. And honestly, today's message is really just a matter of perspective. It's kind of a reminder, actually. Because this isn't Christmas. This is. This is what we're celebrating. A teenage mother, alone with her husband, giving birth on the dirt floor of a first century stable. And it didn't look like this. It looked more like this. So Christmas doesn't include all the fanfare and all the glitter that we've made it become. There were no pine trees or colored lights or snowflakes or candies. And as much of it as it may be a shock to you, there were no presents when Jesus was born either. In fact, the wise men were not there at all when Jesus was born. Bugs me to no end that every nativity set on the planet seems to include wise men, because they weren't there. They showed up about 2 years later. I mean, they are, don't get me wrong, they are a part of the birth narrative of Jesus, but on the night that he was born, it was just the family. I mean, the wise men are kind of like Zechariah and Elizabeth. They're part of the story, but none of them were there that night. No, on the night that Jesus was born, it was simple and it was quiet. There were some shepherds that came to visit briefly, but even they wouldn't have been there right away. I mean, it would have taken them time to come in from the fields outside of Bethlehem where they were with their sheep, where the angels showed up to tell them that Jesus had been born. It would have taken them time to deal with the sheep and get into town and go and see the baby Jesus, yeah? We don't know how soon it was that they arrived. We just know that they came sometime that night. So the image of what we're really celebrating at Christmas looks like this. A couple and a baby alone in the dirt. And this is enough. But Pastor, isn't giving gifts also good? Yep, absolutely. Of course it is. And what about decorations? Well, honestly, that's how we celebrate things, isn't it? We decorate, we spruce up the house. We even just having family over on the weekend, we have to spend 9 hours cleaning our house because it's a mess all the time, right? Like, we do decorate. So are decorations bad? No. Decorations are great. They're fine. They make our house look lovely, hey? Nothing wrong with the trees. What about spending time with our families? Isn't spending time with our families good? Yes, absolutely. Of course it is. And what about the food and the treats and the candies and the sweets and all the other stuff that comes along? Isn't Christmas a time of blessing? 100%. Absolutely. Of course it is. All of these things that have become a part of how we celebrate this season are rooted in good. They became traditions because they originated in the idea of blessing. And blessing is good. But in the midst of all of that wonderful stuff, how often does it actually cause you to stop and think about this? See, the truth is, if you want to know what people are celebrating, you look at what they're spending their time and their money on, don't you? Doesn't matter what it is. If you want to know what they're celebrating, you look at where they're putting their time and their money, right? So I'm going to ask you the question that slapped me in the face earlier this week. On Christmas Day, never mind the whole season, even just on Christmas Day, how much time do you give Jesus? I mean, if he is who we're celebrating, how much time are we actually giving him? Now, before I get lynched or chased out of the building, I need you to understand something. As I was writing this message, I wasn't thinking of any of you. I was deeply and critically thinking of myself and my own family. And I want you to understand that. You see, as a family, we have gone to great lengths to try and maintain a right perspective at Christmas time, to try and teach our children to hold Jesus in their minds and their hearts and their very spirits throughout this season, and especially on Christmas Day. And we have tried all kinds of stuff, especially when the kids were little, because it's harder when the kids are little. They see all this stuff and they soak it up, right? Like a sponge. It's so quick and so easy. And they immediately gravitate to, I mean, who doesn't? Candy, cake, cookies, trees, lights, flash, fat guy in a red suit that's going to give you anything you ask him for. Of course they lean in that direction. So we would do all kinds of stuff to keep our kids focused. There were even a few years there where I made my kids sing Happy Birthday to Jesus before they were allowed to do anything Christmas morning. Because I mean, yeah. Here's the thing. When I thought about this question of how much time do I actually give Jesus earlier on in this week, as I was asking myself that question, I started to break down my own Christmas Day in my head, and this is what I came up with. Normally on Christmas Day, I spend 6 to 8 hours cooking, right? The turkey, the stuff, like all the everything. If you've done the big Christmas dinner, it takes a long time, right? So I spend maybe 6 to 8 hours cooking. I do a lot of other things when I'm cooking because there are breaks in there, but 6 to 8 hours cooking. We spend, I don't know, an hour or two anyway opening presents and all that stuff, right? Spend an hour at least or two calling family, wishing them Merry Christmas, asking them what they're doing, having those conversations. Close friends, things like that. We spend probably 2 or more hours eating a gigantic meal and then sitting there going, no, I'm not hungry. Oh, maybe just one more, right? Like, we do that for a couple hours. We spend a couple hours flopped on the couch, half watching a movie, half falling into a turkey coma. And we spend hours cleaning up at the end of the day. Hours. Oh, my goodness, it's such a mess. Usually stuff left over. It takes us about 3 days to clean up from Christmas. Now, throughout the day, we do offer up some prayers. Through the day, we do give him thanks. We might even read the Christmas story at some point, and Jesus definitely gets mentioned. He definitely gets talked about. But if I'm being completely honest, the time spent doing all those other things vastly outshines any time I give the Lord. So this is the reason we're talking about keeping Christmas Christmas. Not because I think any of you have anything you need to change. I don't know. Only you and God know that. I have no idea. But if you're anything like me, what I do know is that I want to do better myself at keeping Christmas Christmas. So how do we do that? I mean, we're not getting rid of our tree. We are not going to suddenly stop giving presents to each other. No way. It's amazing. I love that. We're not going to stop doing those things, and we're definitely going to keep eating turkey because turkey. Come on. And what about family? Well, any excuse to spend time with family is good, right? So we're not going to change those things. So what do we do? Truth is, there are a few things that we can do, and one of them is we can be prepared. And I don't mean this to sound silly, but, Advent is literally the time of preparation for the coming Christ, right? That's what Advent is. It's 4 weeks long. That's 4 weeks to prepare. It's 4 weeks to get ready. And we do a lot of things. I mean, we use that time, we make sure that we get our turkey. That's like priority number one. We put up a tree. We may decorate the house. We make sure that we get the lights up. We make sure that we get all our presents in time, right? So that we got everything in. We're looking for those discounts. It takes time to do those things. But here's the thing. That's not what Advent's for at all. See, Advent gives us 4 weeks to prepare our hearts and our minds and our spirits to celebrate the birth of our Redeemer. To celebrate the one who came into our mess to rescue us. It gives us time to think about what Christmas really means. It's a time for us to consider God's idea of hope, what his idea of peace is, what his idea of love and joy are all about. It's a time for us to figure out how we're going to celebrate the birth of Jesus. It's 4 whole weeks to prepare. Man, that's a lot of time to figure it out, isn't it? And the fact that we do it every year, you'd think we'd have it figured out. Are you taking any time to consider what Christmas Day really means? Because I would suggest that it's critical for every Christian in the world to do just that every single year. To think deeply and critically about what Christmas really means. And the reason is because I think most of us have kind of stopped thinking about it. We know the birth story. We hear it every single year. And like most things that we hear or see all the time, sometimes we tend to check out. We get desensitized to the point that sometimes we don't think deeply or critically about it at all anymore. But here's the thing. As a maturing Christian, familiar scriptures are something that I go back to all the time because they continue to reveal new things. Have you had that experience before? Something that you have read probably 24 times and you go back and suddenly God is speaking something more. I return to the same passages time and time again because they keep revealing new things. And that is true of everything I read in the Bible. The more mature I become in my faith, the deeper I can see into the Word of God. So why wouldn't this story be the same? Why wouldn't the birth narrative of Jesus as it's found in the Scriptures be the same? I mean, if we're growing in our faith at all, then it's likely there is going to be something new for us to learn or new for us to become every year we dive back in. So if you're like me and you're looking to do better at keeping Christmas, then maybe you want to take some time this season to pause and consider what this season really means. Maybe you'll take the time to read through the story for yourself and see what God is saying to you this year. Maybe you'll use the Advent season to prepare. Another thing we can do to help keep Christmas is make new traditions. I like this idea. I mean, let's face it, we are not going to undo the mess that Christmas has become. There's just too much there. It's kind of like trying to put the avalanche back up on the mountain. You know what I'm saying? It's like putting the toothpaste back into the tube, or trying to get Rachel to eat anything I cook her for dinner. Pick whatever impossible analogy you want. We're just not going to do it. But we can be intentional about making our own family traditions at Christmas time. And it might be something simple like just reading through and talking about the birth of Jesus with our families or our friends on Christmas Day. It might be that we find some new way to express our love and appreciation for Jesus at Christmas time. It might be something that we do throughout this season that intentionally puts the focus on Jesus instead of on ourselves, on our families. Maybe we do something that looks a little bit more like what we see the shepherds do. I love what happens with the shepherds, because I think it's a really good illustration about how we should be reacting to the birth of Christ. So let me read this to you. This is in Luke 2, verses 15 to 18, and this is what it says. When the angels had returned to heaven, so this is like they came and they made their big thing, and the heavenly host singing and all that stuff. It's over. The angels had returned to heaven. When they had returned to heaven, the shepherds said to each other, "Let's go to Bethlehem. Let's see this thing that's happened, which the Lord has told us about." They hurried to the village and found Mary and Joseph. And there was a baby lying in a manger. After seeing him, the shepherds told everyone what had happened and what the angel had said to them about this child. All who heard the shepherd's story were astonished. So maybe this is about a new family tradition where our families tell people about Jesus at Christmas time. Do you tell people about Jesus at Christmas time? It's a pretty great time to be telling people about Jesus. I mean, in the whole scheme of things, there are 2 times during the entire calendar year when everybody is more susceptible to hearing about Jesus. It's Christmas and Easter. So why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we make that a new tradition? Because let's face it, statistically speaking, it is not a tradition for Christians. Remember, ultimately, what we're celebrating is the moment that God himself came down into our chaos to rescue us, saying, "Don't worry, it's me. Take my hand and I'll get you out of here." Do we do anything at Christmas time that takes Jesus out from behind our closed doors? If not, then maybe there's a new tradition we could start that would do just that. Tell everyone what happened and what the angels have said about that child. Maybe your family could come up with a new tradition this Christmas. Maybe our church family could come up with a new tradition this Christmas. Something that helps keep Christmas Christmas. So one last thing we can do to help keep Christmas Christmas, and that is probably the most obvious of them all, is to focus on Jesus. The fact of the matter is, whether we spend any time at all during the Advent season preparing, or whether we bother to create any new traditions or not, Christmas is about the birth of Jesus Christ. That's what it's about. So at the very least, shouldn't we be focusing on him? Can you imagine getting invited to someone's birthday, right? You get invited to someone's birthday and you get all excited about the party. You're allowed to bring people with you. So you start making a list of all your friends. You spend your time, going through who's going to come with me, who's not going to come. And you start making arrangements, how you guys are going to pick each other up and stuff like this. And because you got all these friends coming, you want to make sure that they don't necessarily know. Maybe some of them know the birthday boy. Maybe they don't. So you want to make sure they have a good time. So you go out and you just get them some little gifts or things that'll just make the day go a little bit nicer for them, make them feel a little better about things. And you show up to the party with all your entourage with you, and you kind of, hey man, to the birthday boy as you head into the house for the party, and you spend the entire party essentially ignoring them. I mean, you see him when you go into the kitchen to get yourself a drink from his refrigerator, and you kind of nod as you go by, grab a drink, and you head back out to where all your friends are and stuff, and you hang out. You guys have a great time. And then as you're on your way out the door at the end of the party, you're kind of like, hey, man, thanks for a great party, and you walk out, and that's it. You don't even give them a present because, well, you spent your money and your time and your energy all before the party getting ready for your friends, making sure that they had a great time. I mean, you got family members there and stuff like that, and you want to make sure that they were really blessed, so you spend a lot of time and energy on them, and then you leave. That's messed up, isn't it? I mean, if we're talking about someone's birthday party that you got invited to, and that's how you behaved, that'd be really weird. But that's how Christmas looks for a lot of people. I'm not saying any of them are you. I'm not. But it was the first thing I thought about me. And so I'm saying it this morning. And I'm saying that if you're anything like me and you want to do better at keeping Christmas, then maybe this season there's a way for you to focus just a little bit more on Him instead of everything else. Maybe what that means is that we need to try to do things a little bit differently than we've done them in the past, no matter how many times we've done them a different way. Maybe instead of letting our planned social gatherings dictate when we can spend time with Jesus, we could instead let our time with Jesus inform us of what time we'll have for other social gatherings. Maybe it means that we stop in the midst of celebrating all that we do to go and find Him and spend some time with Him on the day that we celebrate His birthday. You should see your faces. I'm not trying to get anybody upset, but I am trying to make you think. And I hope I'm making you think. Because if I'm saying this stuff and it's dropping like a lead balloon, if it isn't bothering you a little bit, maybe it's something we should look at. Because I know as I was writing this stuff, it was bothering me like crazy. Because I know what I'm like. And if you're one of those ones that just went, oh man, I have literally spent the last 10 Christmases and barely thought about Jesus at all because we were so busy and we're just family and all that stuff. I'm that guy. I've done the exact same thing. I don't want you to think any different. Just because I'm standing up here doesn't mean I'm not human. I am so human. And God gives me these messages because He's trying to teach me things. I don't know where you're at, but I know that I want to keep Christmas. And these are some of the things that I know I need to look at a little bit more closely. I need to be prepared. I think our family needs new traditions. Something that's going to take us out of the mess that Christmas has become and bring us a little bit closer to Him. And I know that not just my family, but me personally, I need to spend a lot more time focused on my Lord and Savior at Christmas time, because that's all that Christmas is about. It's not about anything else. We include other things, but He is the only thing that Christmas is about. Do we know that? We should know that. And we should know that not just in our minds, but in our hearts too. And that's how we should be living. He is Christmas. Whatever it is that you might choose to do, if you want to do better at keeping Christmas, then be intentional. Do it on purpose. Be prepared. Maybe make new traditions or spark up some old ones. Focus on the Lord, because it really is His day. I'm going to invite the worship team to come up, and we are going to sing one last song.